So today you're going to be getting a sneak peek of my new armour, which is obviously going to feature on this channel a lot in due course. Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. So first of all, about the armour, what it's based on, why I based on that, and then we're going to look at actually some fitting of that armour in Serbia. Now for anyone who doesn't know, a couple of weeks ago I was in Belgrade in Serbia. If you haven't seen my video where I was actually in the fortress, check that out because, you know, if you don't get to go there, at least you'll be able to see it through my video. And hopefully I'll be going back again as well because I had a great time and I really liked the place. So armour, why do I need a new armour? Well, do I need a new armour? Do I want a new armour? Well, it's a bit of both, isn't it? You only live once. So if there's something you want, you should go after it if you can. And frankly, because I make videos about armour and swords and military history, this is something which is actually very useful for my channel and hopefully in some way you benefit from it as well. So what do I use armour for? Well, firstly, obviously I teach HEMA classes, so I do armoured HEMA, that's one thing, but I also do living history and reenactment. And on that topic, this weekend coming is the Battle of Tewkesbury, which has obviously been featured on my channel quite a few times because we get some good photos out of that. It's a fantastic event. Apparently there's going to be a heat wave, hooray. Wearing armour in a heat wave is never fun, but it does give me video content, of course, because there are things we can talk about that. How to prepare for it, how to cope with it, how to fight it. Anyway, we'll look at that in due course. So if you're around in the area, if you're in the UK, why not go to the Battle of Tewkesbury reenactment? It's the biggest medieval battle reenactment that you find in the UK. Annually, and it's this coming weekend. Anyway, so I will be there and I'll be in the bodyguard or leading the bodyguard for the Duke of Gloucester, who becomes, in future history, Richard III. Right, so yes, I am a Yorkist. So, so the armour. So what is it based on? Well, quite fundamentally, when I thought, okay, I currently have a Italian-made Burgundian French style armour, which I love. I'm not going to get rid of that. Probably, I'm probably going to keep that. But thankfully, due to this channel and the support that I received through patrons and everything else, I am able to get another armour. And I've always wanted an English armour. Now, English armour is very difficult to do because there's no surviving extant English armour. So we have to base it on primarily the effigies, also the brasses, written sources and other artwork. So I decided to base my armour on one particular effigy, and that is the effigy of Sir Humphrey Blunt, spelt Blount, pronounced Blunt, I believe. So, like James Blunt. So, why did I base it on him? Well, quite simply, I decided I am portraying someone in Wars of the Roses reenactment. I am portraying Sir Roger Kynaston, who is, as it happens, an ancestor of mine. He was my 12th great-grandfather, and that's why I decided to portray him. Number one, he was a Yorkist. Number two, he was in the Duke of Gloucester's retinue and a supporter of the Duke of Gloucester, and he was an ancestor. So why not represent one of your ancestors if that's something that's possible to do? Okay. Obviously very distant and lots of other people. He is also lots of other people's ancestor as well. So I'm not special, but it is nice having that personal connection. Now, we don't have an effigy for Sir Roger Kynaston, but we do have an effigy for Sir Humphrey Blunt. Why are those two things connected? Because they were both sheriffs of Shropshire at different times. Okay, so that's really, really useful because in fact they kind of leapfrogged. So the Sheriff of Shropshire, or Sheriff of any other county, was a role that you took on for usually 2 or 3 years and then it swapped over. Now it just so happens that Sir Roger Kynaston, my 12th great-grandfather, and Sir Humphrey Blunt basically took turns at being Sheriff of Shropshire. So really, really useful. I don't have my ancestor's effigy or know what his armour looked like, but I do know exactly the same time period, dates to about 1470, exactly the same social status, and they knew each other personally. They're probably distantly related as well. So we've got this other effigy which has a connection to my family and the person I'm portraying within the Wars of the Roses, or at least at Tewkesbury. So therefore, using that effigy, and it also helps, I like the armour as well. And I'm not the only person out there. I know one other person is having an armour built based on this effigy as well. And thankfully, I'm friends with Toby Capwell. He had a bunch of images of that effigy, shared them with me. So I am getting the armour made by Tabor Armory, who are based in Belgrade in Serbia. That's why I was there for a fitting. Okay, so what we're going to see here is looking at some of the fitting of that armour. I'll talk a little bit about some of the considerations of the fitting at this stage. It's relatively early stage of fitting, primarily looking at the cuirass, how the arms and pauldrons interact with the cuirass, also the legs. And this was done initially with casts, so I sent casts of my legs and then measurements of the rest of me. And this was the first fitting. There'll probably be another fitting before it's completely finished. But I hope it's interesting. Enjoy, and thanks very much to Peter Poliak and all of the other people at Tabor Armory in Belgrade in Serbia for hosting me. And of course, if you've got any specific questions about armour manufacture, fitting, wearing, anything else, get posting in the comments down below and I'll answer as many questions as I can. Cheers. So today we're going to have a different kind of video. This is a behind the scenes for me doing an armour fitting for my new armour. So I'm here in Belgrade in Serbia at Tabor Armory, who are making the new armour for me, which you're going to see some glimpses of here. Obviously further down the line, when it's all finished, we'll do some videos about it. We'll talk more about English armour, how it's different to Italian and German, all the other armours out there. But here we have Peter, just come and say hi to the camera. So hi. There you go, Peter and Ilya. Do you want to jump on screen? Here. Hi. Right, so these are the two main guys who've been helping me out. So I've been in communication for a long time now with Peter, trying to get all the finer details. One of the complicated things about this is we're trying to base armour on a stone carving, on an effigy, which leaves lots of questions unanswered, doesn't it?
Yeah, it will be an interpretation.
An interpretation,
not exact,
yeah.
Reproduction.
Exactly. So you know, with Italian armour, for example, often we can go and look at the surviving armour. Same with German armour. We don't have any surviving English armour, as far as we know. Same for French and most others, actually. So we have to kind of use what we know from other armours. For Jurassic Park fans, frog DNA, but then we have to use common sense. We have to look at the effigies, and of course we're using Dr. Capwell, Tobias Capwell's books, aren't we, which are obviously very, very useful to this project. And in case you wondered, fitting armour is ideal. It's not always possible. Both in the modern world and historically, people often had to send casts of bits of their body, which I've actually done. My legs are over there on the table. They're the bright yellow things over there. So I partially sent casts and I partially sent loads of measurements. Now, Tabor, which incidentally, if you're wondering, means a camp. It's a Bohemian reference to a camp, like the fortified wagons, for example, that the Bohemians were famous for using. So the guys at Tabor Armory, and I'll stick a link to them down below, they can just do it all based on measurements, but they can also do casts. I wanted to do casts of my legs to get them as precise as possible, but my good friend Alex Pocklington, for example, who you might know as Drakinophil, he actually has a couple of different armours from these guys, and he just did lots of measurements. So you can do it either way. So whether it's historically or whether it's in the modern world, the ideal is to be able to physically get to your armourer. So I've actually jumped on a plane from the UK, come here to Serbia. I've had a great time. It's incredibly hot, so I've been sweating a lot, and now I put all this gear on. And I was here yesterday. We did some fitting, which you'll see some of the footage from, and this is the second day of fitting now. So I had a first day of fitting, they made some tweaks and changes, and now I'm here for the second day of fitting. And that's the ideal, if you can get to your armourer, but you don't need to. And I do know people, myself included, who've had very well-fitting armours just by doing lots of measurements and casts and getting it done remotely. We're looking for the scotch, which is the scotch tape. So this is the completely, obviously, 15th century authentic way of attaching armour to someone with sticky tape.
Russians.
But everybody does this in the modern world. It's just the easiest solution. How they did it originally, maybe they just did it with cord and string, I don't know. But you have to be able to attach the armour to the person in order to see how well it's fitting, and then you take it away and make some changes. So one thing the eagle-eyed amongst you might notice which is different about this thorax, which is what we sometimes refer to the upper part of the cuirass as, is it goes fully over the shoulders. So whereas an Italian harness normally finishes up here and then just has straps over the top, this actually goes fully plated right the way over the top. And this is something that was very clearly very popular in England because it's shown on a whole bunch of different English effigies where we can see the top and we can see the plate going fully over.
How do you feel? Does it fits better? Because
Yeah.
like
What did you do?
some magic.
This cutting is now longer than
Oh,
was
okay, okay. So we're just talking about the armholes, so getting the balance between protection versus mobility on the armholes underneath the arms is quite a tricky thing to do with a cuirass.
Ja, dit is een stuk zo'n shirt.
So this is the placard. So the placard is the lower half of the upper body. There's no fold or skirt yet. Incidentally, fold usually refers to actually the male skirt, but there's no plate skirt yet for this. That kind of comes afterwards. So it's a question of getting the upper chest fitted to the waist and obviously to the rib cage and the shoulders and everything else first. So it's coming in really well at the waist. Obviously, because it has to come really in at the natural waist, and that's why my arming doublet is like a corset and pulls in there to really fit well. That's what gives you the mobility, but it also shares the weight. It means that I don't have any weight on my shoulders. The weight is actually taken down here at the waist.
Ну, здесь есть правило. Я чуть-чуть приподнял здесь.
So you can see that the front of the chest is domed, as it should be. So there's a gap between the breastplate and me. And in fact, we've got a 1.5 or 2 millimeter placard, can't remember which, and no, that's about 2, I think, and 1.5 millimeter chest underneath. So I've got a huge amount of steel in front of my torso, which is the bit being hit by arrows and lances and poleaxes. And it's away from my body as well with a bridge-like structure. So it's incredibly defensive. It's the optimum, really. It's the most effective type of breastplate, really, until we get to gunpowder weapons. This is kind of, for medieval weapons, this is about absolutely optimal. And this would be, once it's hardened, would be absolutely suitable for jousting even. I'm not symmetrical as well. My right shoulder is So if you're wondering what this strange contraption is on my head, so this is the basis for the great bassinet. And obviously getting the fit of the great bassinet to match the shoulders, the back plate, the front, is really, really complicated. And obviously it has to fit your head as well, but that's true of all helmets. So the length of your neck, the projection of your jaw, everything has to match with a great bassinet. So it's one of the most difficult things to get working right with the rest of the armour. And you should have a little bit of movement inside the great bassinet. So it itself is buckled down at the back and very often the front as well to the cuirass, which means if someone hits you in the head with a poleaxe or a lance or anything else, you're very well protected. But it's got one of the lowest mobilities of any helmets. So So you are able to turn your head a little bit inside it, and you do actually have very good vision and breathing. It's one of the reasons I love them. But yeah, so and incidentally, there's also a sallet to go with this, which is the effigy shows a sallet, but I want and need in my life a great bassinet. And it's very good if you can get the great bassinet made at the same time as the cuirass, because they have to work together. The other option, if you can't get the great bassinet until later, is to just have the armourer have access to you in your armour. So someone in your own country, for example, who can stand there and actually fit the great bassinet to you in your armour. That's the other option. Or you could travel with your armour to where they are. So it's good. So we actually did the fitting for the sallet yesterday, and you can see some lines drawn on it, because at the moment it's too deep, as it were, or too high. So the over the eyes, this line over here will be cut up, and the back will be cut up. And remember that there's some rolls and other things to do. So you have extra material on the edges to allow for the rolled edges. But fundamentally, this is I would call it, for the British people, a Mr. Whippy. So it's a pointy. You'll know my other open-faced sallet, which has a pointy top. I really love these. This is going to have fluting on it, and it will have a visor and a bever as well. So this will be, unlike my other one, which is open-faced, this will be fully enclosed, but it will have a lifting visor. And of course, you can take the bever off, so you can wear it as an open-faced. And this is based on the one actually shown in the effigy. Now, actually on the effigy, it's actually partially broken, but it has been glued back together. But it has what we could call a panache. It has a sort of heraldic crest and covering on part of it. So we can't actually see the top part of the sallet on the effigy, but we can sort of guess the shape of it from the shape of the covering. And there are other effigies, and in fact, this helmet is being based on another related English effigy, a little bit later, about 5 years later. And we're just basing the bever and the sallet on that one combined with this effigy. So this is the helmet that probably you would wear with the bever in war, and the great bassinet at this time, because we're talking 1470 here, the great bassinet is usually what you'd wear in a tournament for fighting with poleaxes or half-swording or whatever. So if we look at the Beecham Pageant manuscript, for example, you can see there everyone in war is wearing sallets or armets or early close helmets, but then in the tournament they're wearing great bassinets, because great bassinets are great for tournaments, but they're less versatile on the battlefield. So sallet is what I'll probably spend most of my time in, but the great bassinet very useful for HEMA harness fighting. So I didn't get it on camera, but we've just been trying out the arm pieces. And so essentially this arm harness has lower and upper and then an elbow in the middle, which might sound completely normal, but they're not joined by articulations or rivets. They're actually pointed individually to the arming doublet or to each other. So they are kind of articulated via pointing. We'll look at that more when they're constructed, because it'll be easier to show then. If you're wondering what these lines are, they are going to be fluting. So the English were quite into fluting at this time. In the German way, though, the Germans seem to like sort of radiating flutes. The English preferred kind of like corkscrew flutes. So essentially my upper and lower arms will have a corkscrew going down them, and then the elbows and knees, incidentally, have something that's a bit more kind of like leaf-like fluting. So yes, English had fluting, yes, Germans had fluting, but it wasn't the same kinds of fluting, different style of fluting. And then also we've got the, where's the pauldron? Down here. Down here we've got the large pauldron plate, and working out how that interacts with the rest of the harness. Obviously it has to interact with the breast and back plate, but it also has to interact with the upper arm harness as well. So getting these things to work together can be quite complicated. Yeah. So that goes up there, and I think we've decided to reduce it slightly. Also, it doesn't have the cutout for the lance yet, because they're asymmetrical pauldrons. So just like with typical Italian armour at this point in England, The left arm is bigger than the right arm. The right arm is your predominant weapon arm, so you want it to be lighter, but you also need to be able to couch the lance underneath. And before you ask, yes, there will be a lance arrest attachment point, as there is on the effigy. So you have to have a cutout for the lance to go through there. So getting the relative sizes of a lot of these things. The lower arm, I think, is relatively straightforward, but the elbow, the upper arm and the pauldron, which interact with each other, trying to match the proportions so that the elbow doesn't clash too much with the pauldron, but also has a bit of a gap which shows the upper rear brace or upper cannon, the upper arm, as on the effigy. But bear in mind that effigies aren't always anatomically precise, so sometimes they have overly long arms or overly long legs, and we think that the arms might be a little bit exaggerated on this effigy. So it's, you know, trying to get something that works but still looks like the effigy is quite complicated. You'll notice that the greaves here, which are the plates on my shins and lower legs, are just taped on, so they're just taped around my legs and they just stay there. There's nothing holding them on, and that's what you really want with greaves. Greaves should be so fitted to your leg, so closely fitted to your leg, that they just stay there by themselves. This is beneficial in a huge number of ways. For a start, it's much more comfortable, but secondly, it means you don't have any weight pulling down on your upper legs or anything above that they're attached to, because they just kind of adhere and stick to your lower leg, so they become self-supporting. It helps also, these are relatively thin because they're made of carbon steel that's going to be spring tempered, so they can be fairly thin, which also of course makes them light, which assists in them staying where they are and not wanting to sort of pull them downwards the whole time. Where they could, you know, if they weren't well fitted, they could sit on the top of the foot. And some people get away with that by wearing sabatons underneath, but you don't really want that weight and that friction between the greave and the sabaton. You want them to be separate elements. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope that was somewhat interesting, perhaps even illuminating. And as I say, if you've got any questions about this particular armour, or you know, the history of the people I've mentioned, the historical characters, or indeed about Tabor Armoury, or about what options I'm choosing and why, because I'm choosing 2 different helmets, I could talk about that. Any other specific questions, get posting down below and I'll answer as many questions as I can do. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I have been Matt Easton, and I will of course continue to be. I hope I see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers folks.